stream. We are dreamed into existence. What we do with that dream is up to us. This is Stream. I am Jessica DiRuzza, and I share with you my stream of consciousness and host sacred conversations. Listen for free on your favorite podcast app and follow me on social media at Trust Psyche. The best way to show your support is by subscribing to my YouTube channel, Trust Psyche. Click the notifications bell to be updated about new monthly videos. One of the things I love most is teaching people all around the world to do what I do through online courses for all levels. Find me at trustpsyche.com, where you can begin studying astrology with me right now. Trust Psyche production and music by the lovely Travis DiRuzza. Let us begin. How we dream is as important as what we dream, for the what of the dream knows itself through the how. We're coming to you from Sci-Fi Records, the amazing studio of Travis DiRuzza, where all of Trust Psyche Productions happens, including this stream podcast and all of the music that you've heard here and at other places in Trust Psyche. This is Stream 21, and today is July 26th, 2020. And this is a very special stream because I'm here with two guests, both Travis DiRuzza, whom you've heard many times before.
Hello, Jessica.
And we are also here with our daughter, who is inside of my belly right now. We are pregnant and we are ecstatic, over the moon, to be welcoming our daughter into the world this fall. So this is a really special time for us. And as we are creating new life, we feel that everything that we're creating during this time carries that quality of birth and of a new being coming into this world. So today we want to talk about the Great Conjunction. The Great Conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. The Star of Bethlehem. And as you go out at night to look at the night sky, within the hour after sunset, as you look to the southeast, you can see Jupiter shining so bright, and then down there a little below to the left is Saturn. And of course Pluto is also there, which we can't see without a telescope. But this really special conjunction is actually something that Travis and I have been spending a lot of time with. We're going out almost every night for a walk or a swim here on our little island of Siesta Key in the Gulf of Mexico, and just spending time looking at these two. And you, Travis, were actually the one to inform me that it's called the Great Conjunction.
Yeah, some speculate that the Star of Bethlehem, as you mentioned, was a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, so exact that they fused to the naked eye and created a bright light in the sky of unfamiliar proportion because they were truly conjunct. Conjunct to the naked eye as if they were one stellar body. And that this perhaps was the star that the Magi followed to the manger.
Take us to the manger, baby.
Take us to the manger.
And I think part of what I'm feeling into in the specialness of this conjunction is that it only happens every 20 years. Mm-hmm. And because Jupiter and Saturn are the two planets that we can see the farthest out with the unaided eye, for a long time, up until the 1700s, we thought that Saturn was the edge of our universe, of the cosmos. And so when Jupiter and Saturn would come together in their great conjunction every 20 years, it was like the farthest out reaches of the cosmos coming together. It was the edge of our world in the largest sense.
It's one of the greatest cycles of time of the visible planets. It was naturally their greatest cycle.
And I also think being able to see them every night is really special. To commune with them on just such a physical level. And they're just so bright. They're so beautiful. And it's really hot here where we live. And since I'm pregnant, I'm really sensitive to the heat right now, which is actually atypical for me. Both Travis and I love heat. We love the tropical weather, hence why we live on an island and in the Gulf. And so we've been doing a lot of our exercise at nighttime. And we're fortunate enough to be able to go swimming where there aren't other people around, which has been really wonderful. To be weightless for moments at this time. And when we were sitting in the water, you started to sing a song, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to sing it for us now. What you sang when you looked up to Jupiter and Saturn.
Sure. This was the song that came to mind when I saw them there in the sky. Sat on their park bench like bookends, newspapers blown through the grass, falls on the round toes of the high shoes of the old friends. Old friends, winter companions, the old men, lost in their overcoats, waiting for the sun. Sounds of the city sifting through trees settle like dust on the shoulders of the old friend. Can you imagine us years from today, sharing a park bench quietly? How terribly strange to be 70. Old friends, memory brushes the same years, silently sharing the same fears. memories of your memories, they're all that's left you.
That really has a certain tone, a certain quality to it. I'm wondering if there's anything you want to say about it, or what made you think of it, or what it brings up for you.
Yeah, when I saw Jupiter and Saturn together like that in the sky and was reflecting on the fact that they were the largest cycle of time of the visible planets, I just saw them in this dance together, a long dance, an ancient dance, one of the most ancient of dances. And I thought of their complementary nature, their companionship in this way, their counterpoint, the way that they've been playing off each other as two of the great archetypal forces of existence, of manifestation, of the whole. And they're both antagonism and secret love affair, and all the gradations in between. The secret alliance of tragedy and comedy. The jolly and the destitute as companions in the great drama of existence. And so, I don't know, I thought of that song and these old men, these old archetypes sitting on the cosmic bench of existence saying, wow, what a life it's been. And the newspaper blows through the grass and falls over their toes. It's like the news of the world. The great politics and power of the world stage is like a crumpled up newspaper across the toes of these great archetypal forces, and them surveying the span of creation. Lost in their overcoats, waiting for the sun. It's another Jupiter-Saturn image. They're all the time, they've spanned existence. They're in their overcoats, old and cold, waiting for the sun, waiting for that life force that's behind it all, that is what animates that long existence that they've spanned together. I could go on. I could gloss every line of the song, but I think that
I like it when you do that. It's a particular approach that you have to understanding and interpreting reality that is different than me. It's a different dimension of psyche to approach. You know, you majored in literature, and I feel like you have a very literary approach to interpreting reality. You and I are both very much readers of Psyche as a dream. We read things symbolically all the time.
yes.
I tend to read more at the archetypal, universal level of the planets. And though obviously you are proficient in doing that as well, you're much more closer to Earth. You're a much better dream interpreter than I am, like of actual dreams at nighttime. And your literary ability in interpreting reality is what allows you to understand things like lyrics and poetry, movies and novels in a way that, honestly, I miss a lot of it. I can feel the feeling tone, but I miss a lot of what's going on.
I think this is really rich what you're pointing out, and I think it connects to what we were talking about earlier when we were swimming in the ocean, and we were talking about that kind of spectrum and cusp between what you're here calling archetypal and symbolic reality. What there I was talking about is archetypal and subtle level phenomena. On the one hand, the archetypes as they kind of manifest in this cosmic dimension, and on the other hand, the symbolic subtle level being some of the collective thought forms and costumes that those archetypes wear when they manifest in reality as a poem, as a song, as a certain tarot deck, as Kali or Shiva or the god of monotheism or various other collective thought forms that are inflections of the basic archetypal forces that are animating existence. And it's not to say that one is more real or better or any kind of value judgment, but it's to acknowledge the spectrum upon which manifestation seems to take place. To understand that, like, kind of Jupiter in its purest form is a different level of reality than Zeus or Juno or the abundant earth goddess Tefiti in Moana.
Yeah, I mean, what that does for me is interesting. It's like, it feels to me like, I don't usually speak like this, but like, it feels like when my soul travels to different star nations, I am able to pretty immediately interpret at a cosmic celestial level the coordinate system of the planetary bodies within that star nation. And it's like I have that universal key to unlock that wherever I am, whatever solar system I'm in the universe. I don't know how much time I've spent on planet Earth itself. In ways I feel like not a lot, yet it's familiar enough to me. Maybe perhaps because where I come from has similar qualities to it. You, however, feel like you've either been to Earth more, or your ability to read the terrestrial texture of the planet that you're on comes to you much more naturally than it does to me. I mean, your grasp of history, your grasp of language, your grasp of mathematics, although mathematics perhaps may be universal.
A more pure frequency in the terms that you're talking there.
Sure.
I think you're pointing out like a coarser. It's like you can use the metaphor of high and low, but without any value. Or you could say finer and coarser frequencies or textures. And you're saying that I'm adept in some of these coarser textures of history as it materially embodies itself moment to moment and piles up on itself in meaningful patterns, versus this very fine-grained texture of the archetypal energetic coordinates that you're pointing out.
I can see the universal patterns and essence. I can see the essence of things. I don't know the details or have the ability to maybe in a most like congruent and coherent way lay it out in a linear logical fashion, but I can pretty immediately intuit into the core essence of what's happening, and I understand on a phylogenetic evolutionary level how the person came to be, the moment came to be, and I can connect that with the planets. So when I see the planets in the birth chart, I get a pretty immediate, like instantaneous sense of what's happening for this person, where they've come from, where they're at now, where they're going. And it's instantaneous. It's like it's like a key to a map that's instantly unlocked. But like, I don't know anything about culture or history. Like, that's not, I just don't.
Right. Well, and I think in the same way, the map that you see isn't necessarily filled in your head. And like the client helps you to understand, no, but what's actually the interior of this map? What's actually the meat of the skeleton I'm able to see? And you need to be in dialogue with your clients so that you can tune in to how this archetypal map that you're seeing is like dropping into the waveform at these, coarser frequencies, and how it's actually playing out, how the waveform's collapsing, how that the choices that the person is making, how that's unfolded. Because I feel like at the archetypal level, we so much see potentialities of manifestation, and then how the person actually chooses to show up as a free-willing existential being that moves in the arrow of time in this direction and not backwards, that intersects with the possibilities of archetypal reality. And so in that way too, they help to fill in the actual meat and the texture and the materiality of the deep map coordinates that you see.
And I think this is where it's interesting, where our abilities begin to intersect or overlap, is we both come to an understanding of humans and relationships, but we come at it from different angles. So I come at it from psychology. I'm well versed in understanding how psyche works and how people work and how relationships work. I spend so much of my time doing that. I mean, I've been, when I was a little girl, I would just people watch, and I would stare, and I would analyze, and I would question, and I was just always curious. My dreams at nighttime are always a processing of people and relationships and emotions, so in that way there is something, it's not terrestrial. I mean, humans are of the earth, but the way that they participate in psyche, for me, it's psyche. It has its connection and bridge in and through the archetypal, but it's like, I don't know, I can read Homo sapiens. I think I can read whatever the entity is on whatever planet I'm on, because there's something universal about the form that consciousness takes in beings that are conscious, particularly in a self-reflective way that somehow looks like a human does. You also can do the same thing. You can understand relationships and people, but you learned a lot of it through literature. You learned a lot of it through playing music. You learned a lot of it by being in bands and playing all around the world. And you really had a very immersed, visceral, lived experience by being with lots of different types of people for many, many years.
It's true. I'm parsing it all in kind of Chris Bayes and others talk of different levels of consciousness at the psychic level, the subtle level, and then the archetypal level is what would connect to finally the causal level. But so far we were talking about the archetypal and the subtle level. And then I want to point to the psychic level below that, which is just the immediate field of our emotional, psychic soul beings, still kind of contained as particular people. We haven't risen to the collective level where we're talking about collective phenomena, the collective unconscious, collective thought forms. At the psychic level, it's still our individual emotional and psychic body. And I want to talk about the differences of each of our approaches at that level. I think you are so naturally able to tune in to where someone's psychic emotional body is at. And your profession, career as a psychotherapist, as a guide of psyche, is connected to your gift to, tune into where one's psyche is at and help fine-tune them and help locate the things that aren't working and adjust the person at that level. Because you're very emotionally receptive, you're able to sense how people are feeling. I think for my side, at the psychic level, especially as a young Moon Saturn male, I was very disconnected from my emotions early on, and have only gotten better at the psychic level at sensing people's immediate emotions like later in life. And it was kind of like my talent at the level of literature and the collective actually advanced first and then taught me to be more empathetic on a one-to-one level because of the kind of truths and lessons that I learned at that collective level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there's something you said, like being with my clients and the adjustment happening there. It's so interesting because although I have a very analytical mind, the real work for me and the type of therapy I practice and the quote unquote adjustments that are happening is by a sheer joining with that person on a psycho-spiritual level. It's a very emotional level of being with and like symbolically understanding, reading what's happening through Psyche symbolically, and then translating that into hopefully connection and repair to do it differently than the way that it was done that often caused great wounding and trauma to the person. Mm-hmm. And learning how to become the dream figure and to be with that person in like a very human, real way where like I'm becoming more human.
Right.
We're both becoming more human. It's a becoming. We're becoming together, and that's where the mutual healing is taking place. And that's why I love my job so much. And I think something that you bring that really helps ground my more watery nature, being Pisces rising and Sun Neptune, my highly sensitive, empathic, intuitive nature, is you really help me honor the placement of logic and reason to balance out the equation, to right size things, to put them into perspective, and to help me better navigate the terrestrial world.
There's definitely a place for logic and reason. It's important at one point, I think, in everyone's development to rail against logic and reason and to realize its limits and its foibles and its trespasses. But it's also important to give it its due, because sometimes it will right size phenomena in ways that it's easy to get emotionally spun out, and it's your ally. It is the ally of your emotions, and it's your ally in processing the things that need to be processed to the degree that they need to be processed, and not more or less. Being judicious, bringing the Queen of Swords and the Queen of Cups together to decide those things together. It's like that's a high functioning psyche.
Right now, Mercury in the sky is at 15 Cancer, and it's opposing the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn with Pluto. And you're born with Jupiter and Saturn conjunct 1982. So everyone born in 1981, 1982, you're born with Jupiter and Saturn in a conjunction, just like they are now, also with Pluto, which is much more rare to have all three together. So Travis, you have that. And then I'm born with Jupiter square Saturn, Jupiter rising in Pisces, square Saturn at the midheaven in Sag. So this archetypal combination or cycle of time is inherent to us and of the times right now, and with Mercury there, such a good time to talk about it. But what I'm noticing is that it's almost impossible not to be talking about Jupiter and Saturn. I mean, even if you don't know astrology, it's like I feel like all the words that are coming out of our mouths relate to this combination. I feel like everything, all the movies we're watching, all the TV series, like, everything that we're doing is saturated by this energy, which technically came into orb around Christmas of 2019, at the turn of the year into 2020, and is going to be with us until April of 2021. So we have about 8 more months of it. I mean, and it's currently in Capricorn, and then it's going to move into Aquarius.
I think for me and for all of us, it especially flashed when this eclipse came through, not far off of it. And fun side note, this eclipse came through. The eclipses come through on Metonic cycles that last 19 years. So with this eclipse being aligned with this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, it's part of a Metonic cycle of eclipses that has aligned with it. The previous conjunction and also the conjunction under which I was born. So this 19-year eclipse cycle is right in its point that it's aligning with the 20-year Jupiter-Saturn cycle. You know, the Jupiter-Saturn is much more give-take. The Metonic cycle is exact to like 12 hours. 19 years later, the exact same day, like 12 hours earlier. Clockwork. But these ones have been in alignment for a little while. And I think especially since that eclipse came through recently here on the solstice, it was on the solstice to boot, lighting everything up. Just felt those themes coming through strongly.
Like the lyric in the song that you sang, Waiting for the Sun.
Waiting for the sun, yeah.
Yeah, on the solstice and the eclipse.
Exactly.
And it just
Waiting
like
for sunset.
supercharged it, as solstices and eclipses do. They supercharge things. They give it such a tremendous boost of energy and force. And so it makes the, especially anything that they're an aspect to, those archetypal forces so much more vivid and pronounced and powerful and saturating consciousness personally and collectively. And Jupiter-Saturn, more than any other archetypal combination, has to do with social justice. And of course, everything that we're seeing right now with Black Lives Matter has Jupiter-Saturn written all over it. Justice and looking at history and making amends, deep amends of the original sins of kidnapping and enslaving Africans and building the economy and wealth of the United States, or what would become the United States, off literally the backs of blacks.
Like literally the infrastructure that we still use has been built up from the bottom by this labor.
And what's particularly poignant about this Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto cycle of 2020 is that it's also the Pluto return of the United States,
Exactly.
which happens every 250 years. And as our country approaches its 250th birthday, Pluto is returning to the place that it was when the United States was founded in 1776. And how we see this in part being exemplified right now in at least the American psyche, but I think maybe even beyond, is in the play Hamilton, which now everybody can see if you have access to the streaming, the Disney Plus. We recently saw Hamilton, and I'm not going to go too much into it, but if there was ever a piece of art or theater that was more relevant to the Pluto return of the United States and of the Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto cycle that we're in right now, it's this. And I think that, the other original sin is the genocide of Native Americans.
Exactly.
And so what you see with the Jupiter-Saturn on the level of social justice and is that when Pluto comes in, it dramatically empowers that process and brings it to a titanic geopolitical level. It's massive. It's volcanic. It's eruptive. It's intense. It's powerful. It's libidinally charged. It's destructive and it's creative. It's the burning down and it's the rebuilding. But it's also the deep reckoning of having to look at our ancient history and our ancient past and looking at the aspect of our shadow. And that's what Pluto does. And it's not a question. It's not an invitation. It's not a perhaps. It's an abso-fucking-lutely. And that's exactly why it's a reckoning. You ain't going to get out of it. Your ego isn't going to be able to find some kind of way to bypass it. You can repress and deny. But eventually, and the longer you do that, the stronger the volcanic eruption becomes, because the way that volcanoes work is the longer they don't erupt, the more pressure that's created, the stronger they are. And Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto isn't just a volcano, it's those super volcanoes, like the ones that when they explode could potentially take out all of life on Earth. That's the level that we're talking at here. And that's what we see happening all across the world in this pandemic. And the way that the pandemic is dramatically revealing all the injustices on every level, socially, politically, economically, environmentally. There's no more hiding. And that's the nature of this particular great conjunction.
Yeah, I feel what you're saying. I feel like it's the Pluto driving the force of evolution that you're talking about, and it's running through a Jupiter-Saturn script that's jumping to this next level. And I think in all these ways, we're being pushed to move from identifying as individuals to identifying a little bit more with the collective. And as you take that step to identifying with the collective, you can't help but encounter the ethical imperative of what it means to actually acknowledge what's happening to the others around you.
Yeah, makes me think of the old Friends.
It seems like we're on an individual spiritual quest at first. But as you go deeper into that, you realize that the breakthroughs that you make on your individual spiritual quest reveal to you that, in fact, you're in a collective situation. When the Bodhisattva says that I will keep coming back until everyone is liberated, it's to really identify with all the suffering in the world and say, no, that's mine. That's mine too. And I won't be okay until that's okay. For me, it's really important to frame our spirituality in a way that is coherent and hooks right up with our social justice concerns and the ethical imperative that we're talking about here. And for me, the end of philosophy, spirituality, all the great religion pursuits of Jupiter will always be the law of Saturn that demands that you do good unto the other before you, that you treat the other as yourself, as another self, as the collective tissue that we live in. So I think that's important on a way that I frame my spiritual approach. And I also think simultaneously the collective right now is waking up to something that is the very same theme, of Jupiter-Saturn being pushed up into the collective psyche and being asked to evolve it into the tissue of how we are with one another. And I think this is also the culmination of Uranus-Pluto square, that we're really integrating into our collective being a new chapter, waking up to civil rights, personal rights, gender rights.
Yeah, that they truly, none of us are free until all of us are free.
Exactly.
And the more that people stubbornly hold on to denying that, the more painful this will be. And what I love seeing right now is that more people than ever from all walks of life, from all around the world, have had enough. And when you see someone get to that point, right, it's not just the Black community anymore that's had enough. Like, it's all the communities, right? It's not every single community, but so many different types of people have had enough. And that gives me so much hope and strength to keep going. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I don't feel so alone anymore in my rage and my anger and my sorrow for the injustices that I see and feel and experience, both as a woman, as a daughter of an immigrant, as a daughter of a Muslim, as the granddaughter of a black man who raised me until I was 8, my grandpa Bill, to see how he was treated, to see how he was treated in light of being married to my white grandmother, to my other members of my immediate family who are Mexican. I mean, when I realized that I was white, which was a pretty rude awakening somewhere around 5, I was so disappointed. I was so upset. I was like, fuck. And then I was like, well, okay, then I got to use it for good. It's interesting. In my family, I'm a minority. I mean, in my family, there are 2 full Caucasians, and then me. I'm white presenting. I'm actually 75%, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, but I look white. So I'm white presenting. So there's, looks like there's 3 white people in my family, and everybody else is from somewhere else. And a lot of these issues that we're seeing now play out, especially here in the United States, have always been very personal to me. Because these people are my father and my brothers and my sister and my cousins and my grandfather. So to see these stories now taking center stage in Hamilton, taking center stage in Black Lives Matter, seeing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting up there and giving a badass speech in the House of Representatives. That woman is definitely going to be a future president of the United States right at the Pluto return. Boom shakalaka. Now that is a worthy Pluto return.
Thank you.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's like I finally feel like my insides are on the outside.
Yes, she makes me feel that way too. Thank goodness.
So I think the quality of Jupiter-Saturn having highs and lows, for me, living with it my entire life, it's like this constant meditation into how to ride the roller coaster. How do you go up the mountain and come down the mountain? How do you go back up the mountain and come down the mountain? And how do you remember that when you're going up, you're going to come down, and when you're down, you're going to go back up? And for me, the saving grace in that cycle, that cyclical pattern, is the deep remembrance of that truth when I'm either on the top of the Jupiterian mountain or I'm in the depths of the Saturn Valley. And to know that when these two, the old friends, are together, both must be appeased in their expression. And to forego one for the other does not allow the fullness of their gifts and their ancient wisdom to come through. Because as you said and sang in the song, they're old friends. You can't separate them. It's not possible. There's a reason they travel together. And so how do we honor and participate in them and allowing them to come together so we can get the best medicine from them and offer our best medicine back to them?
I try to remind myself, even in the valleys, in my sorrow, to try to find gratitude. And even in the peaks, to humble myself and to remember how low I've been. Can I do that? Can I make that my spiritual practice? And can that connect me to something that transcends the coaster, not not in an escapist way, that embodies the coaster. Yeah, that encompasses the coaster, that accepts that yin yang aspect of existence. I think that's a deep truth at that level.
I guess the word poignant comes to me for Jupiter, Saturn. Like the really deep truth that within every blessing there has been suffering. And within every suffering there is a blessing. Like within every problem there is a gift. And within every gift there has been a problem. Like, it wouldn't be a gift if there wasn't something that, like, was difficult to get there.
Right.
It wouldn't feel like an act of grace if it wasn't bringing some type of resolution to something that has caused great heartache or pain or disconnection. All aspects of Saturn that we're also familiar with in being human, especially here on Earth right now.
Right, like it wouldn't be a gift if it couldn't have not been. It has to feel like it might have not been the case for grace to feel, and yet, because of grace, I was saved. And it could have not been the case.
I think it's particularly poignant to think about this great conjunction in light of the fact that our daughter's going to be born with it.
Exactly.
And of course, you two will share the great conjunction together, the Star of Bethlehem. And, I'll share the square aspect of it. But there's a really deep archetypal resonance. And of course, we see here the epigenetics of astrology in this repeating signature of Jupiter Saturn. But as I sit there and I look at the night sky and I realize that she's coming in through this energy, I think there's a way, as her mother, that I'm doing my best to vibrationally tune into what that means for her. What quality of being is she, to come in at this time, to come in with this aspect. And, I mean, speaking of old friends, it feels like the three of us are old friends. I do get that sense already. We've been traveling together for a long time.
What a time it was.
But that, our journey to conceive her was, it was very difficult in many ways. There was a lot of clearing and purifying of our nest and our lives that we had to do in order to make genuine room for her to come into our life in a good way. And I feel like even though Pluto has so much to do with purification and cleansing and the transformation that has taken place, which has clearly been there. It's been, Pluto's been opposing your moon and now it's squaring mine. But it really has had this Jupiter-Saturn quality to it of like, how can we be most fair and most just to this being that's coming in, that we are going to be spending the rest of our lives with and are already deeply karmically entangled with and will continue to weave our karmic stories together. I mean, there's your karma, there's my karma, there's her karma, and then there's the three of our karma together. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's like we're making room for her karma. And Saturn relating to karma, and Jupiter, that philosophical understanding of what does it mean to be an ethical being, and what does it mean to be a moral being, and what does it mean to be just, and what does it mean to be fair.
But also even just making space for her karma is Jupiter Saturn.
Yeah. Growing and stretching to make room for her karma.
Exactly.
And it's just like, and I'm sure so many parents feel this way. There's nothing like the journey toward parenthood that makes you walk your talk and face yourself at such a deep level. I mean, just the most real, deepest level ever. And I just feel like all of the suffering and pain and challenges that we went through to become parents and becoming parents now, I can genuinely see the Jupiterian gifts and all of it that makes it make sense, that makes it worthwhile, that makes it ultimately meaningful. And I think Jupiter-Saturn in its best expression does that for every individual and whatever their own personal agony or suffering or disconnection or pain has been. There's when you show up and you're present and you participate and you follow through, especially when the things are the hardest things, it's like that's when Jupiter shines the brightest, and that's when you get the best sides of these old friends. It's like they work best together.
Right.
So we're nearing the end of our hour together, and I'm just wondering if there's anything else we want to share. Oh, I know what it is. So part of also what we're super excited and proud about with Trust Psyche is we have reached over 100 students worldwide, which is amazing and shocking and phenomenal. It's so exciting.
So great.
And Jupiter-Saturn definitely can be the aspect of the teacher. And so here we are celebrating over 100 students, and we are doing a free astrology webinar to all Trust Psyche students, past and present, whether you've been in person doing initiation to archetypal astrology or embodying astrology, or if you've done it online. That would include those courses, and astrological counseling and deepen your astrological practice. So if you've done any of those courses with us in person or online, we would love to see you on Friday, August 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time on Zoom. And you just register by going to trustpsyche.com/events or on the homepage, and you'll get the link, and we'll see you. And it'll be a live Q&A and an opportunity just for us to be together and to be with the other students and just to ask whatever astrology questions that you've been having from your studies or your practices. And this is for all levels. So whether you're brand new to astrology or you've been practicing for decades, we already have a great group of people who've RSVP'd, and I'm super excited for just getting to see you and spend our time together. I mean, nothing brings me greater joy than being with my students, and I love questions, and I just love being in dialogue. So we're really, really, really excited to be offering that. And we're also super excited about our upcoming online astrology courses that are coming out next year in 2021. So the 3 new ones that are coming out next year is Transit Astrology, The Art of Living, which will be taught by me. It's probably going to be about an 8-week course. And that's just going to be going fully into personal transits, the timing of them, the calculations of them, the technique of it, and then the spiritual practice with it, the interpretation of it, how you work with it, what it means, going really deep into that. I'm super excited. I think it's the next level. And of course, initiation to archetypal astrology would be your foundation for that course. It'd also be great if you'd taken deep in your astrological practice, because then you would have full understanding of the planetary combinations and cycles of time in their meaning and interpretations, which will make you really well suited to be able to just super dive in and get so much out of the transit astrology course. The other course I'll teach, which will be shorter, probably more like 6 weeks, will be Aspects in Astrology, Sacred Geometry, and that'll be just focusing primarily on the 5 major aspects of the conjunction, opposition, square, trine, and sextile, and really understanding their meaning, and going really deep into just their like origin and their history, and then how we apply that to chart interpretation. And then the last class, which is gonna be awesome,
is the astronomy and cultural history of astrology. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be probably an 8-week course, and we're going to trace the history of astrology from its origins, Babylonia, up to the present, grand survey, and we're going to look at the astronomy at the same time and see how the human species' understanding of the astronomy evolved and how that maps with the evolution of astrology as a phenomenon itself, its cultural inflections, how it was seen and held in the ages, right up to the present.
Yeah, you're going to see all of Travis's scholarship and research come together, and of course his proficiency in history and math, and just really bringing a super grounded, coherent, awesome take on the astronomy, which we should all know as astrologers. And then the cultural history, just so important to understand that, like how the way we practice astrology today came about, and understanding it from different cultures and different eras. And I've just really enjoyed seeing you prepare for that class, and I just think it's going to be a really amazing addition to the Trust Psyche School curriculum, and I think it's a must-take course for everybody so that we all are rooted in that important Saturnian knowledge and history, and then Jupiterian philosophy of like, yeah, how do we have the cosmology and worldview that we have today? You know, we need to understand where we've come from to know where we're going. And that's also a very Jupiter-Saturn quality, to understand where we've come from to know where we're going. That's another way that the old friends work together. The following year in 2022, I know one more course that we'll offer more than this, but I'll be teaching the... what am I calling it? I think I'm calling it synastry and composite charts, understanding relationships with astrology, something like that. Anyways, we're going to be focusing on synastry and composite charts and looking at relationships with astrology. So that's 2022, but super excited for 2021. And I hope that you will join us, and that the best way to get the most out of those courses is by taking Initiation to Archetypal Astrology right now, which is a 12-week course. It'll give you everything you need to do birth charts and transits for yourself and for other people. It gives you all of the technique, and then it gives you the worldview and the practice. And then Deep in Your Astrological Practice is also a 12-week course, but it's about double in scope, and it just isn't completely focused on the meaning of the planets and when they come into relationship with one another, like Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, Pluto, or Sun, Mars, right? It just goes into every single one of these, and it does it multimodally. So through me teaching and dialogue, through music and dance, through art and poetry, we get all of those different levels of learning. So those two are available right now at trustpsyche.com/astrology courses. And if you take those, then you can come to this webinar on August 14th and ask your questions and join us live, and we would just absolutely love to be with you. So, thank you so much for joining us on Stream 21 for the great conjunction, the Star of Bethlehem of Jupiter and Saturn. There's so much more to come. We have just barely scratched the surface here today, and I think that's it.
What a long, great conjunction it's been.
I'm Jessica DiRuzza, here with Travis DiRuzza, and our daughter.
Time it was, and what a time it was. It was a time of innocence, a time of confidences. Long ago it must be, I have a photograph. Preserve your memory.